Hey, everybody, and welcome to this deep dive.
Mm.
Today, we're going to be looking into something pretty fascinating, the legend of Atlantis. We've got some interesting source material to go over. For we've got a book. It's called E.T. Don't Want Us in Space.
Okay.
And we've also got a stack of reference books about ancient history and mythology.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be kind of like Indiana Jones meets ancient aliens.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so interesting about these sources is they don't just look at Atlantis as like a myth.
Right.
Like they actually say maybe it was a real place, like maybe it really was this lost superpower.
What?
And this book even suggests like specific locations,
Oh, really?
like where Atlantis might have been, like the Bayan Karaula Mountains.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of those?
I have not.
Okay, well, that's where they found some pretty interesting stuff. Archaeological finds, they call them, like the Dropus discs.
The Dropus discs. Those sound pretty cool.
Yeah, like imagine like, these discs made out of like some metal, nobody knows what it is. And they might even have symbols on them.
Ooh.
Nobody can really decipher them.
Wow.
And some people even think that, I mean, this is where it gets really interesting. Some people think they're like extraterrestrial.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, nobody really knows. Like, the evidence is kind of all over the place, but it really does make you think, like, what if these discs, and other things they found from that time period, like bronze stuff.
Right.
What if they were, like, proof that there was this super advanced civilization, like Atlantis?
Right. Or maybe even aliens.
For aliens.
This is where it gets really cool. I know this book mentions the Anunnaki,
Oh, yeah.
and they're a big part of this Atlantis discussion.
Right.
But can you remind me, like, who they are
Yeah.
and how they fit into this whole Atlantis thing?
Yeah. So the Anunnaki, they're, a lot of people translate that as those who from heaven to earth came.
Wow.
And they're in these, like, ancient Sumerian texts.
Okay.
And they describe these really powerful beings that came to Earth from maybe a planet called Nibiru. And, I mean, according to these texts, they, like, mined gold. They messed around with genetics. They even created humans
Whoa.
to help them with their work.
So we've got these super advanced beings coming to Earth, maybe interacting with humans.
Right.
Could Atlantis have been, like, their spot?
That's what some people think. Like, maybe it was, like, their main base or a colony.
Wow.
And some of these Sumerian stories, like the story of the Tower of Babel, you know that one?
Yeah.
Where they say the Anunnaki got all mad because humans were getting too ambitious.
Wow.
It's like, it kind of suggests that, maybe things weren't always peachy between humans and these aliens.
Interesting. It sounds like there's so many parts to this story. Anything that kind of ties it all together?
Well, that's where Enuma Elish comes in.
Okay. What's that?
It's the Babylonian creation epic. It's written on 7 tablets.
Okay.
And it describes, like, how the universe was made.
Right?
And there were, like, big battles between the gods. And it talks about how the earth was created. And it even mentions Nibiru.
So it's like the backstory for the Anunnaki.
Exactly, yeah. And it also describes this massive event that, like, reshaped the earth.
Okay.
Maybe even, like, a huge flood,
Huh.
which kind of links back to the whole Atlantis being destroyed thing.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That makes me think about all those flood myths, like from all over the world.
Right.
The Bible,
Yeah.
the Aztecs, they have cox.
Yeah.
The Greeks have Deucalion.
Yeah.
It's crazy how many different cultures have that same story.
I know. It's wild, right? What if all the stories aren't just, like, made up, but they're, like, echoes of a real event? Maybe the thing that destroyed Atlantis.
Oh, it makes you think, right?
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, how could one event, affect so many different cultures?
That's the big question.
Yeah. Okay. Now, my mind is officially blown. We've got potential aliens, floods, and now these flood myths.
Mhm.
But what else? Like, what other things are similar in these old cultures that might, point to Atlantis?
Okay, well, think about pyramids.
Okay.
They're everywhere, right? Egypt, South America.
Yeah.
And then there's mummification,
Huh?
sun worship, using the cross as a symbol.
Yeah.
All these different cultures separated by, huge oceans. Could that all just be a coincidence?
It does seem like a lot. Like maybe there was some kind of plan
Right.
that spread all over the world.
Yeah.
Could Atlantis, with all its advanced stuff,
Yeah.
maybe even aliens, could that have been the source?
That's exactly what this book suggests, that Atlantis was like the origin point.
Wow.
that its influence went way beyond just Atlantis itself. And if that's true,
Yeah.
it like changes everything about how we think, civilization got started.
Totally. Interesting.
And the book says that's because those places were just like too far away from Atlantis and its colonies.
So you're saying like wheat, barley, all those crops that built civilizations, they could have come from Atlantis.
It's a big claim, right?
Yeah.
But think about it. Domestication, turning wild plants into food, that takes like a ton of knowledge.
Right.
Experimentation, careful selection. It doesn't just happen overnight.
That's true. It really makes you appreciate how smart those early farmers were.
Yeah.
But if Atlantis was so good at agriculture, shouldn't we have found more proof? Like from archaeology.
You'd think, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking about something that might have been around thousands of years ago.
Right.
A lot of that evidence is probably underwater or just gone.
Yeah, that's true.
But there are some like really interesting clues that make you wonder.
Like what kind of clues?
Okay, think about bananas.
Bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something we eat all the time.
Yeah.
But the bananas we eat today, they're seedless.
Yeah.
Somebody had to like carefully cultivate them
Right.
over a long time to get them like that.
I never thought about that. I always thought bananas were just naturally seedless.
And that's the thing. The book wants us to question, like, where did the stuff we rely on come from?
Yeah.
What if the banana and all these other important crops, what if they started in Atlantis
Yeah.
and then spread through trade routes and colonies?
That's a pretty cool idea.
Mm.
What other evidence points to Atlantis as this, like, source of knowledge?
Well, there's language and mythology. The book talks about how similar languages and stories are in cultures all across the world.
Right, we talked about the Basque connection.
But it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
It's like finding pieces of this giant puzzle
Yeah.
all over the world. The Egyptians, the Aryans, the Basques.
Right.
And the book says that Atlantis is like the missing piece in the middle,
Okay.
the thing that connects them all.
Huh.
Like take the decimal system.
Uh,
It's in ancient cultures everywhere. The Americas, Greece, India,
yeah,
maybe. That came from Atlantis.
that's an interesting thought.
Right.
But some people might say, well, those similarities are just coincidences.
Right.
Humans think in similar ways no matter where they are.
That's true.
Right.
But the book says there are just too many of these coincidences.
Yeah.
And they're too specific.
Right.
It's like finding fingerprints at a crime scene.
I like that. So what kind of fingerprints do we see when we look at myths and beliefs from different cultures?
Well, we already talked about the flood myths,
Right.
but there are also a lot of similarities in like religious practices, social structures, even how they saw the universe.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure, like the world tree or the tree of life.
Okay.
It's in all kinds of mythologies. Ancient Egypt, Norse legends, Native American stories.
Yeah.
Could that be something that came from Atlantis?
That's fascinating.
Carried by people as they moved around? Or through cultural exchange?
It makes you wonder how certain symbols and ideas show up in so many different cultures. Almost like they're tapping into something deep inside us.
Yeah, like a shared well of meaning.
Right.
And the book suggests that maybe Atlantis, with its connection to the Anunnaki and all their knowledge, maybe they helped shape those ideas.
Speaking of the Anunnaki, let's go back to them for a second.
Okay.
We've been to talk about how maybe they weren't so friendly to humans.
Right.
What does the book say about the Anunnaki themselves?
Well, it's important to remember that the Anunnaki, according to the Sumerian texts, they weren't all the same. They had their own fights, power struggles, disagreements about what to do with humans.
So it wasn't just aliens came, aliens built stuff, aliens left.
Nope, it's more complicated than that.
Okay, so how did these power struggles affect humans?
Well, the book uses the story of Adam and Eve as an example.
The Garden of Eden.
Yeah. The book says that maybe that story, about humans disobeying God, it could be a secret message about the Anunnaki manipulating humans.
Wait, how does Adam and Eve connect to Anunnaki power struggles?
Think about the serpent.
Okay.
The one that tempts Eve?
Right.
It's all about forbidden knowledge, right?
Yeah.
What if the serpent represents, like, a group of Anunnaki
Okay.
who wanted humans to have more knowledge,
Huh.
even if it meant disobeying the other Anunnaki?
So instead of just humans being bad, it's like a fight between different Anunnaki.
Right, exactly.
And humans got caught in the middle.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes you wonder what the Anunnaki really wanted.
It does. Were they trying to help us, control us, or something else entirely?
It's crazy to think about, okay, we've talked about cultural connections, aliens, but what about physical evidence?
Like what?
You know, pyramids, megaliths, those intricate artifacts we find all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
How do those fit in?
That's where things get really exciting.
Mm.
Because the book says that those structures,
Mm-hmm.
especially the pyramids,
Yeah.
they weren't just tombs or temples. They were something way more advanced.
Like spaceships.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
But the book thinks the pyramids might have been some kind of advanced technology,
Yeah.
maybe for generating energy. Really?
Yeah. It talks about how they're perfectly aligned with the stars,
Uh-huh.
their complex chambers.
Yeah.
It even hints that they might have used sound or vibration.
Whoa. So the pyramids weren't just monuments, but like ancient power plants.
Yeah, it's an amazing idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they were so advanced, why don't we know how they worked? Shouldn't scientists have figured it out by now?
This is where the book gets a little controversial.
Okay. How so?
It says that the knowledge of how to build and use those technologies, it's been lost. Maybe even hidden on purpose.
Hidden? Like by who?
By people in power. People
Right.
who wanted to keep that knowledge from us.
That sounds a little like a conspiracy theory.
Maybe not a conspiracy, but the book does make you think, has someone been hiding ancient knowledge from us?
It's a crazy thought. Like we've been robbed of our own history.
Yeah. It makes you think about who controls information.
This whole conversation has been wild. I feel like we fell down a rabbit hole of possibilities.
It's a lot to take in.
Before we get lost, can we take a break?
Oh.
I need to process all this.
I agree. Let's pause here. Let these ideas sink in. And when we come back, we'll finish our deep dive into Atlantis.
Okay.
We'll talk about what it all means for how we understand history and where we fit in the universe.
Okay, welcome back to our Atlantis adventure. We've looked at ancient myths, we've explored some clues, and we've even thought about the possibility of, aliens being involved in human history. So, after all this, where are we? What have we learned?
Well, if even just a little bit of what we've talked about is true, it changes how we understand history and our place in, like, the grand scheme of things.
Right, like we're not just talking about a lost city, it's a whole new way of looking at things.
Exactly. It's like we've been looking at human history through a tiny little window, and now we're realizing maybe there's this huge, amazing view we've been missing.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
It's humbling to think that maybe we're not as advanced as we think we are. And the Anunnaki, if they were really here, it just adds another layer to everything.
For sure. The idea that, ancient astronauts might have been involved in shaping civilization, it's fascinating and a little scary, to be honest.
Yeah. It challenges everything we thought we knew.
Right.
Okay, so let's say we wanted to find actual proof of Atlantis. What would we look for?
Well, the book talks about the need for more underwater archaeology, especially in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. It thinks that if Atlantis is out there, it's probably buried under, like, tons of stuff on the ocean floor.
So like sending down those underwater robots,
Yeah.
the ones with cameras and sonar.
Exactly. We need to scan the ocean floor, look for cities, structures, anything.
That would be amazing.
And it's not just about finding objects. We also need to look at old texts and myths from all different cultures with a fresh perspective.
Like maybe there are clues hidden in those stories.
Exactly. We need a new generation of, like, archaeologists, linguists, historians who are willing to look at this stuff with an open mind. Not stuck in the old ways of thinking.
That's where our listeners come in. You don't need a degree to be a part of this.
Right. You can be an armchair archaeologist.
No.
Dig into those myths.
Yeah.
Research those weird anomalies. Ask the questions that nobody else is asking.
This has been an amazing journey. We started with Plato talking about a lost civilization and ended up discussing ancient astronauts.
I know, right?
It's been a whirlwind of information,
It's a lot.
but it's so cool to think
It
about.
was the beauty of exploring the unknown, right? It makes us realize how much we don't know.
Yeah. And even if we never find Atlantis, just thinking about it has been worth it.
Absolutely. It makes us use our imaginations. It challenges us to question what we think we know. And it reminds us that the human story is way more complex and mysterious than we ever thought.
Yeah, so well said. If this deep dive has made you curious, don't stop here. Keep digging, keep asking questions, and maybe you'll be the one to discover the next piece of the Atlantis puzzle.
That's right.
And maybe we'll be back for another deep dive sometime. Until then, keep those imaginations going and keep exploring.